to just show my work. It doesn't work for me. I really, I'll do that at some time, but right now I wanted to talk about what sacred space means. I wanted to show you one of the most famous artists in the world, and then one that's very underrated, and then I'm the third. So we're going to start off with an article that was in Architectural Digest a few years ago. I'm very honored I was in that article. But in the last few years, people are more and more interested in what sacred space means. So let's look at the article. We're not going to read the article. I'm just going to show you the images quickly because this is more about a conversation. So I'm going to show images quickly. I'm showing you two short videos, one that'll be for 4 minutes and one that'll be for 6 minutes. And I want you to understand on the first one, it's going to be with one of the most famous curators in the world who really I'm obsessed with. He's a brilliant curator, and he's going to talk with the artist. So let's look first. So if you can start, Cheryl. This is the article. It really was a big break for me 4 years ago. It's 7 chapels designed by artists, including Terrell, Nevelson, and Rothko, and I'm one of the 4 others. So let's go through it quickly, very quickly. You're not going to read it. I'm just going to show it to you, and you can read it later. So that first one is one of my favorite installations. It's different now than it was there, but this is the Rothko Chapel in Texas. Let's just keep going, and you can ask me questions later. So you'll see each article has a little information about it, not a lot. This is the second one. This is the Nevelson Chapel. It's beautiful. You can see a Star of David in there, but it's in a church. It's in New York, and I was asked to do a project in the room next to it 10 years ago. I was commissioned to do a small meditative space in reaction to it. But you'll see it's very beautiful, and I think she has a real Jewish feeling to it. Then you get to the next one is Stefan Stubner. Oh, they don't show all the images. Oh, well, and then Tobi Kahn. I'm sorry the images aren't coming through. You'll see it, James Terrell. I don't know why the images aren't coming through, but they will come through later. But you can read about each of them at a later time. I just want you to see the article. It's very beautiful. And Louis Comfort Tiffany, this is a piece that was done by him. And then the last one is Ellsworth Kelly. So I just wanted you to see and that's in Austin, Texas. I don't know why the images didn't come up, but we will send it to you and you will get the images. The only reason I wanted you to see the images very quickly is to see there's no one way of thinking what sacred space is. It can be abstract, it can be figurative, it can be using stained glass, it can be very minimal, it can be very lush. So don't think when we talk about sacred space that there's only one way to go. So we're going to start off with a video, and we'll see his work, but by an artist who I think is very underrated. Let's go to his image, and you'll see a picture of him. I always show a picture of the artist because I think it's important. Look at his image first. Go to the image of him. Go down. Oh. So that's him. His name is Spalletti. He died in 2019. He was an Italian artist. He exhibited Documenta in 82 and 92, representing Italy in the Venice Biennale in 97. He's most known for his light blue monochromatic paintings with different sources that use light. Now, the reason I wanted to show you him is he's very committed Christian, as I am a very committed Jew. And I think it's very beautiful the way his work enhances religious practice. It's not about that, but it enhances religious practice. He's also very lucky that he's married to this brilliant architect and they work together. So let's watch Heinz. You'll see a video, a few minutes of it. This is Heinz Ulrich Obricht, who's a very famous curator in London, and you're going to hear him talk for 5 minutes. And this is in memory of him. It was done this year, and this is on his birthday. It's almost like a yahrzeit, but it's on his birthday. So let's listen to this. It's a long video you can watch on your own, but I just want 5 minutes of it. We're not hearing him speak. I don't know why.
Tobi, you weren't hearing him?
I'm not hearing him. We did hear it before when you had tried it before. Maybe you have to do share screen again or go back up.
Sorry, and it was Suzanne who
now we can
introduced us. Also, Franz West played a big role in this dialogue with Ettore, because Franz West, with whom I was friends from the beginning of the 90s, always talked about Ettore, and I think it's important what Franz said. Franz kind of said that Ettore was an artist whom artists admire, whom artists adore. And I think this idea of the artist is a really important dimension of the practice. Ettore attended art school in Pescara, and one thing which is important, which he told me of these early experiences of him and of the genesis of his early work, is that he had to actually walk along the street by the sea, and on the way to school he would very often actually just linger on the beach. He would stop almost enchanted and be enchanted by the Adriatic Sea, which dissolves so freely, almost towards infinity. And at a certain time early in the morning, as he told me, it loses the skyline as well, where the colors between the sky and the sea come together and everything expands. And I think it's kind of interesting looking at the work to think about this very, very early experience of Ettore with the sea. And it's at that time that he started to paint. And sometimes he felt that the colors looked too aggressive. So very early on, as a student already, he threw buckets of water on the colors to actually reach a lightness in the color. And that's, of course, something which played a role throughout his work, the presence of water, worked with fountains also, and also this idea of bringing water into the color. When I ask him, which I think is always interesting to see where the catalogue raisonné begins, what's the kind of first work an artist thinks is no longer student work, he was telling me about the end of the 60s, and he was telling me about that moment he was actually seeking opacity. And seeking opacity, he made these two small rectangular paintings, one next to the other. And there it is already, the two colors he used so often, blue and pink. And these are the colors he used throughout his life. And he thought of pink as the color of complexion, which is never fixed and transforms continuously according to the mood, the experience, sort of every day is different. And then the blue has the same quality. It's a color difficult to find in nature, as Ettore explained, but we are immersed in the blue. It was also striking to spend time with him in the studio, because the studio is the place he went every single day, and he would often walk. I saw him walk in the studio slowly. He would move a piece, he would close a curtain, he would remove some ash from a smoked cigarette. He looked for hospitality, as he said, and he would also read poetry. I think the connection to poetry was a very important one. Whilst I was in the studio, he read poems to me of Sandro Penna, of Giuseppe Ungaretti, of Emily Dickinson, and many others. So I think the connection, the lifelong connection to poetry, he built a bridge between art and poetry, and that also happened in the books, about which I'm going to talk at the very end. And
okay, that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. So you should watch this later. It's brilliant, but this is more of a conversation between us. I'm going to try and get everything that I'm saying done quickly. He's gone. Yes, I understand. He died a few years ago. I wanted to meet him desperately. He and I shared a friend, but I never got to meet him. Now let's look at his famous church. Let me show you what he did. So this is a chapel in Siena. It was created by, and they worked together. You'll see that. And his wife, I always think it's important when an artist, I'm married to the writer Nessa Rappaport, and I know I'm much more articulate as an artist because of that. And his wife was an architect, and I think it helped him think through his work in a different way. So let's go to see this piece. I love this. So why do I love this so much? Because it's about Kedusha. It's about holiness. I love this piece. When I was creating my sacred space in New York, I thought about this a lot. I believe blue is kedusha, is holiness, and it's techelet. He loved pink and blue. I really think blue and gold are the colors that because in the Holy of Holies, in the Kodesh Kodashim, gold was there. I have to say, I feel so lucky to be doing these programs with Shirel because she really, I believe, understands, because of her background, where I'm coming from conceptually. She's an excellent artist as well. I just saw her work for the first time. Anyway, let's look at the next one. Look, I mean, I feel like crying when I see this. You see the beautiful idol in the corner. It's little, but it's as if God is coming into the space by that blue opening. And I don't know if you know what Shekhinah means. It's holiness. I'm very quiet. I wish there were no idols in there, but I'm not Catholic. He is Catholic. And therefore, it's very important to him. You'll see the other one. Let's go to the other. I feel like crying when I see that. It's so quiet and so beautiful. And I don't know if you can notice the chandeliers on the wall. They're there only for the night, but during the day, they feel like little angels flying on the wall. Yes, feminine aspect of the divine. Yay, you. Thank you. I want this conversation to be everyone. So this is the room. Notice the chandelier. Now, if you go to mosques, I've lectured only once about mosques, and I'm very nervous to do it because I don't want to get things wrong. I know Catholicism. I know Protestant, Methodist. I've worked with so many Christian organizations. So over the last 40 years, I feel very comfortable in speaking about this, but I don't know as much about the Muslim tradition, and I don't want to get anything wrong. But I have been in Morocco in those sacred spaces and the chandeliers, and they have light as an important aspect too. But look how minimal the space is. I don't even know what else to say. Let's go to the next one. We're going to talk as a group, and that is how you enter the space. And I wanted to talk to you for a minute. Why did his wife and why did he agree that it should be a brick building? So you go in there, it could be white. It could be like the famous Ellsworth Kelly piece. Could be like the James Turrell piece that are white. I think it's fascinating that it's brick. Fascinating. So I want you to understand that an artist does something, and when they want you to enter a space, and if you think of the Holy of Holies of Judaism, there were all these things to get you into the Holy of Holies. And in our faith, the Kohen Gadol was the only one who went in once a year to ask for forgiveness for all the Jews. So I think it's all interesting to think about scale. Let's go to the next one. So then we're going to one of the greatest artists alive today. I had the great honor to meet him. In fact, I was invited to do a piece at MoMA PS1 when it was still only called PS1. And I picked to do a space on the same floor as his because I wanted to be in proximity to him. But this is who he is. So now let's look at a short video on him, and then we're going to spend most of the time talking. But I wanted you to see these things to give you thoughts, to get you started on the conversation. Let's go to this. He also comes from a family of faith. So that is his piece.
Sorry about that.
We're going to look at the video. It's very short. It's 4 minutes.
We don't normally look at light. We're generally looking at something light reveals. For me, it was important that people come to value light.
This is at the Israel Museum.
Value gold, silver, paintings, objects. It's not something that you form with the hands, like wax or clay. You don't carve it away like with wood or stone. You don't assemble it like welding it. And it's kind of learning your craft. It took a while for me to learn to work with light so that you really felt its physical presence and came to value it. I started making these kinds of spaces first in my studio, but the idea began to evolve so that I actually was making these spaces outside that you actually entered to then look out from, I suppose, to gain outlook or even insight on how we perceive sky. This is a space where I want to bring the space of the sky down to the top of the space you're in, so that you really feel to be at the bottom of the ocean of air. And you really then experience this quality that can happen at the change of day to night and night to day. But doing this right at the cusp of change was very important.
It looks pretty dark in here, and you go
Light up there.
outside and you're out there for maybe 30 seconds looking at the sky. You come back in and you see more blue than you did when you left.
Yes.
Your eye has just adjusted again.
Or if you would do this, it gets blue again. Blue.
The opening is never covered.
So what about color? How is it formed? Basically, we feel when we look at the sky that we receive this blue, this color. This light, lighting the space in relationship to the sky outside, would definitely intensify greatly the blue. There are a number of painters who've really intensified color by the surround or the context of a shape or area. You could be not only looking at a painting or a work of art, but you're actually looking at yourself perceiving.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. I want to just give you, you're going to watch this on your own later. We're going to talk more. So if it rains, it gets wet. The one at the Israel Museum is all stone. My close friend, who now is not alive anymore, Rachel Cowan, married many people in that space, as did many other of my friends. Let's look at those images quickly because I want to get back into the conversation. So that is, read what it says here. You'll see that. Go back one. I just wrote a few things in there. So this is in Berlin, and it says it's been restored. And I want you to see Terrell has created numerous meditative spaces around the world, including meeting rooms, sky space, and also at the Israel Museum. It doesn't say, there it is. It says Terrell created space for sea that seas in 1992. All right, now let's go look at those for a minute. Again, look at how different the outside space is than Spalletti. Let's go look at, keep going. And I feel like it's such a different feeling. He's much more into giving you a lot of color. And that is my favorite part of the institution, of the chapel, because there, I think this is like Spalletti's, but I have to be honest, I like Spalletti's more. That is, you know, he's a shaker, and that's one of the shaker meeting rooms. So it's made that if it rains, all the wood gets wet and then it dries off. Everything's on an angle, so the water comes down the sides. Let's go. And that is in Israel. I love that. I got that picture from Israel. I teach a program there, and I make the students every day walk in with me quietly, lie down for 2 minutes. That's all I ask for. Close their eyes and all of them say to me, wow, they never thought of the sky as being a color. They just thought of it as sky. And I think that's what makes this so brilliant. Let's go to the next. And that's a round one. He does all different types. And usually you can see there's stone and metal inside, so you don't have to worry about the rain getting everything wet. So that's me. You know me. I'm Tobi Kahn. I just, as quick things, I'm a landscape painter. I do many different things, but I'm also, because of my upbringing, I'm very interested in a sacred space. So I'm going to show you, I've done many, but this is my favorite. And this was my first. It was done in 2003 and Met for the healthcare chap in 2002. It was picked number 3 in the country for small spaces. And then I did Temple Emmanuel. I've done many other ones in the world. Let's keep going because I don't want to waste too much time. So this was a big break for me. I it was not on the top floor, and I didn't want to copy Terrell, so I couldn't cut through the ceiling. So I dropped the ceiling 3 feet and made a dome. So we had 3 different types of light, fluorescent light, tungsten light, and daylight. So you got to choose what color it would be in. I've done a lot of sets in my life. So the chairs, I was commissioned by Father Walter Smith, and he said to me, I want you to make a meditative room. And I said, Father Smith, what do you want? And he goes, well, what do you want? I said, well, you have a chapel already. And in my faith, you need a quorum. You need 10 people. Let me make a space that only fits 9 people. And then I worked a lot with Joe Papp and Elizabeth Swados. I did set design. So all the fabric on the chairs is made out of theatrical foam. And then I dyed the leather into argaman, which is a purple, which is another Jewish color. Not a purple. It's really a reddish, like it's the color of the seats. And I wanted, so when you left the room, it took 5 minutes that your body would continue the shape that it was there until, so when you left your neshama, you were still there. The image on the back of all 3 chairs is the same. It's based on, my best friend is a scientist. He got me interested in looking at how cells reproduce. So that is a cell reproducing and making new cells, because I wanted it to be from all of our beginnings. I made the arms low, and I wanted that when you sit, I wanted you, when you walk into the room, you feel like you're in sky and water, but I didn't want you to feel like you were drowning, but I wanted you to see it from outside. I used a special type of glass that you already know what's behind it, so it's not a shock. I did not want to do what Spalletti did or what Terrell did, because they do that well. I want to give people an idea of what they're entering into. I do that with all my sacred spaces. It's not about hiddenness. It's about entering into holiness. This year, I'm very proud to say my first sukkah is going to be shown off on Sukkot. It's now used as a meditative room for yoga studios, but it becomes a sukkah once a year. But I want you to have a feeling of what you're getting into. So you see the ceiling of 3 different lights, the 3 chairs. Ha'olam omed al shlosha devarim, the world stands on 3 things, Torah, avoda, v'gemilat chasadim. And I wanted, that's why 3. And then on the side, 2 benches, there can be 3 more people. I didn't want any books in the room because I want you to meditate on your own. But he wanted me to have a Quran, a Christian Bible, and a Tanakh. So that is in there, but you can bring the book in with you, but there's nowhere to put it. So it's very much about being at one with yourself. Let's go to the next one. And then Father Smith said, that's the model. So I want you to all see something. It's good. So before I do something, I spend a year or 2 of my life doing something. I always do a model. And then I think about it. I work more. I think, and then it becomes what it is. So I want you to see that when I make something, it's not like, hello, done, finished. There's a drawing, there are images, there's models, and then it's finally finished. Go back to the side. So I didn't want anything on the sides, but Father Smith said to me, well, some people will feel like they're drowning. First, I said, I'm sorry for them. And then I realized it was a commission. So I put like small mountains on the side. So you could feel like there's land somewhere on the side. When you do a commission, you have to care about the people you're doing for. Most important thing I can say. Let's go to the next one. So that is the synagogue I did in Milwaukee. I'm very, very proud of that. If you look on the top, there is a Ner Tamid, and it's in the middle of land, and you couldn't see anything from the shul, from the highway, which is maybe, a few hundred feet. So I asked them to break a hole where the Ner Tamid is, and I used many different lights. So when it lights from outside, all you see is this beautiful glow of light from the highway. All you see, that's it you see, because everything is dark at night. And because I made it that the Ner Tamid is on Tamid, meaning always. So when you drive by, people tell me they already know that they're coming into what I did. Because as I told you, I want to give you a feeling for what's going to happen. So then I did, I was asked to do these murals. They're huge. They fit into the wall because I don't like frames, but they were nervous that kids or parties would knock into the wall. So these paintings are embedded in the wall. Let's go on to the next. And these are all different ways of thinking of creation. This is a Reform synagogue. That is a lot of non-Jews in the synagogue. I wanted to address that issue. So these are the 70 carbonot. Many of my pieces are made up of other elements. So these are 70 nations of the world that we have learned in the Torah, that there are 70 nations in the world. I believe in that. I think we are one of them, but we're not the only game in town. And it's also based on the 70 carbonot. And there are many different things 70 is involved with. They asked me to do a menorah, and I said, how about a menorah, not a Chanukiah? So these are 7. This is different than what you use for Hanukkah. This was based on what is in the Holy of Holies. And I wanted it on each side. And again, if you look at what I do, since I told you 3 is very important for me, you see on the bottom, it goes up 3, and then the sides are 6 on the side with a middle pole. Last one is a smaller synagogue in New Jersey. Again, they commissioned me to do everything: the shulchan, the chairs, the ark, and the building. I took all the angles. It's a beautiful building that's constructed with many different angles, and I wanted everyone in the synagogue to feel part of it. So every angle behind those doors is the Torah, and I took every angle from that building and made it as part of the piece. The chairs are, one is about going to Sinai. One on the side is, there are a lot of Sephardim in the community, so I wanted to deal with that. So each chair has a different element of Judaism. I don't want to get into details because I want you to feel it. The other thing that was very important to me, this is a conservative synagogue where men and women are equally involved. So the legs of the shulchan are non-gendered figures that feel like they could be men or women or they, but it was very important to me that the legs were holding it up were all people, that it was like you raise your hands as Miriam, when she danced, I wanted it to be that humankind was holding up the shulchan, not a man or a woman. I think that's it, right? Oh, that's my newest. Oh, this, I'm so excited. This is my sukkah. It took me 10 years to make this happen. 10 years, and it's now finished. There are 13 panels. You can guess why I did 13. And they interlock, and you see outside and inside. And 11 and a half months a year, it's used as a yoga studio in the inside walls. I don't know if I have that picture. Do I have that picture? No, I don't. You'll see it another time. We just took pictures this week. It's in the lecture at the Phillips. Now, let's talk and ask questions. I hope you got enough out of this. So I hope you enjoyed this somewhat. You learned something. Ask questions. I'm here to answer. So let's talk.
So Tobi, there are already a couple of questions in the chat. Can you?
I hope I didn't talk too quickly. I just wanted to get so much information. 45 minutes to me is like 5 minutes to most people.
And maybe the first one to ask maybe is, what's your first step when you start thinking of a sacred space? Like what's kind of the first step you go to?
I'm going to be very honest. If they tell me it's X amount of space, I ask for, can I have more? The first thing I think about, who is my audience? Am I working in a hospital? I'm working in a synagogue. I did Auburn Seminary, which is an interfaith seminary. It's always depending on who is going to be using the space. I've done hospitals. I've done end of life. When I do end of life, I talk to the nurses, the rabbis, the clergy. I'm always interested who is using the space. What is the space meant to do? So each space, I interview many, many people who are going to potentially be using it. It's never the same. The only thing is the same, I interview people and I take a lot of notes.
And there's a question here about the panels on the sukkah, if they have Hebrew letters or inspired by Hebrew letters.
So this is so interesting. Thank you for asking. I am married to the most amazing writer. My sister's a poet. I have always believed I don't want words in my work. Now, do some of my shrines look like a chet or a yud? I'm sure that's true, but I'm not consciously putting in letters. I'm consciously putting in feelings. So the reason I like using certain shapes is because I don't want to do something that's, I love the two artists I showed you. You heard me say how much I love them, but I believe Judaism is so, there's not one type of Jew, and I want to include everyone. So almost every piece I do is very much about inclusivity and not flatness. So I don't use letters, but I do use symbols, and they're very subtle. Like the Ner Tamid, I did one in Munich. I mean, each one is a different one. The one there is based on a pomegranate. So yes, there are, I mean, I'm a conceptual artist who uses figuration as part of my work, but not the end result. The end result is what you feel. I am thrilled if 5 different people feel different things, and I'm very excited. I'm so friendly with the rabbi in the synagogue and the president, and they tell me that they look at different paintings every time they come in. And that to me is great. So if somebody's getting married, you think one thing. If somebody has a bar mitzvah, it's another thing. If somebody unfortunately is saying Kaddish, it's another thing. I want them to be touchstones for you, and I want you to be an equal participant.
So I see there's a question from Barbara Skolnick, and then from Anita Rosenfeld, and then a couple more in the chat. So Barbara, can you unmute and ask?
Yes, I admire the selections you have for meditative spaces and for the synagogues that you have done. I'm asking about the acoustics in your synagogues because I belong to a temple which was nominated, I think, for Architectural Digest one year, 2010 or 2011. They hired a well-known architect, sent the fellow who was going to do it to Israel. They used Jerusalem stone for a courtyard wall. The temple increased its membership 3 or 4 times, I think, because of the building. The acoustics in the sanctuary are abysmal. I think
so that I want to answer that. Let me answer that right away. I am an artist. I don't do acoustics, but I will tell you, when I did the meditative space at the healthcare chaplaincy, they gave me the money to do everything. And I did have foam put in so you could hear everything. But when I did the big, I have very little to do with that, but I always bring up when I'm commissioned, I always say, make sure you have 2 things or 3 things: great airflow, great acoustics, and great light, because those are the things that you can't do without and you can't fix later.
That's cool.
So I agree with you. That is a big problem, but that is the architect that they hired. That whoever's on the committee should tell the architect. I also make sure that there's a type of carpet that's industrial, because you don't want the carpets to get messed up. I just redid a space in my studio, and I made sure that the floors were going to be easy to walk on. Very important. Those are things you don't notice, but are important. I want to make sure that we get as many questions done, so try and keep the questions very concise.
Oh, Anita?
Right, Tobi, you just mentioned light, and light is a critical element in Judaism. So and I noticed that the 2 other artists use it very differently. How does light come to play with your art?
So light is one of the most important things, but I am an artist who's, I'm very interested in tactility. That is really, I love about Spoletti. I really admire James Turrell and Doug Wheeler, and I can name you 12, but I joke that because of my upbringing, the physical, I always think of the Holy of Holies. Spend some time once and think about the type of materials that were used in there. So I always think about, what type of, if I'm doing a parochet, I've done quite a few parochet, which means the mantle for the Torah. I think about I never use a material that's not organic. I don't use any like rayon, or I'm only using natural materials. As far as light goes, I want the light to be one of the elements, just like color is, but it's not only the light. I admire people that use light totally, but I think the reason that Spalletti touches me more than Terrell, don't get me wrong, I love Terrell, but I like the Maaseh Yodecha, that work of your hands. And I think light is one of the elements that God gives us. You have to use it, but just like I don't only do a one painting that's all blue, even though I love Techelet, it's about an amalgam of putting everything together. I see myself as an artist, as somebody who is a cook, and it's a recipe. You need a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, and then you bring it all together. And the person that asked me, how do I start a commission? I think about, where's the light coming from? Where's the texture coming from? How many people come there? Are they mainly young people? Are they mainly old people? Are they sick people? Are they healthy people? I've done things for baby, in hospitals, maternity wings, and I've also done things for end of life. And I do things quite differently in each one of them, and I use different light. I'll give you one fascinating thing. I love the color red. And when I was doing things for one hospital, one of the doctors said, don't ever do anything sharp and don't ever use red, because people think of red, they'll think in this situation of blood, and it's not a good thought of blood. It's a different, so everything plays into it, not just one thing. So light is an element. I never don't think about it.
So there's another question that I'm going to use and tie into something. There's a question about inclusiveness, and if you think of children using and seeing the space. So I'll just add on to that. If you had a chance of seeing people entering your spaces, and what have you been noticing, and maybe also in terms of the age, and does it make a difference in the way they interact with your space?
So one of the things I learned, and that's what I said to you about the synagogue I did, I used to like paintings on the wall, but because kids come in and they love kicking, not all kids, but I noticed kids love kicking the wall. So I did not want to deal with that. And a lot of kids like walking and put their hands against the wall as they move. I decided then to find ways to make my paintings inset into walls. I almost always do that now, unless it's, I've done works in hospices. And in hospices, I'm sure you understand, people are there for the last periods of their life. So in those spaces, I put all my work under a non-reflective plexiglass. So God forbid, if it falls, nothing breaks. And then I left a type of cleansing material for the workers there, because those spaces are very used. I mean, family is there a lot, and there are a lot of different things happening, and I put them in white frames. And so the images, you can see them, but they're covered. So each one is, it's so different, each space, but I'm very conscious of that. Very, very conscious. And I think any good artist would be.
So we have time for one last question. This is like a crazy kind of, it's like a pearl of a session, a tiny condensed kind of session. And someone asked, do you have any recommendations for creating a sacred space at home? I think it's a beautiful question, because for artists, possibly the studio is another sacred space. And so that question to me ties very much or so to both art and holiness. So yeah, any recommendations and thoughts about that?
So I daven every morning. I pray every morning, and I've moved different areas in my home where I put on my tefillin and prayed. So for many, many years, I prayed in front of the candlesticks that my wife uses. And we have a whole series of candlesticks. And my mother had bought me a Shabbos Leuchter. Oh, you'll know this, from Germany, Sherelle, one of those things that hang. So I used to daven in that corner. And in that corner was also a piece of Im Eshkachech Yerushalayim Tishkach Yemini that my grandparents had, and a Mizrach. So I used to daven there, and I did that for many years. I maybe 10 years ago bought a print by Richard Serra that's a circular paint piece. And I started during COVID davening right there because it's this big, black, beautiful, very quiet shape that feels like it's moving. And the candles and the Ner Tamid, even though it worked for me for over 20 years, it wasn't working for me, and I moved to this other space. So I try and have something that I can look at that is not distracting, but that's like something that will give me peace. So if wherever you live, there might be a place in your home, and it might be something you've noticed always, but you've never really give it attention. I think we can create a sacred space. I know people that use a candle. I know other people that use a piece of bronze. I like keeping things abstract, so I don't, I'm not interested in a picture of somebody in my family, but some people like that. But I think it's something to think about because it brings you to another level. So for next week, I just want to know, should I show less imagery and more talk? Tell me what you want, because I'm here for you guys.
So have a thought about that for a moment. And as you do, I want to thank you, Tobi. It feels like receiving like a pre-Shabbat present to go around my own space and home. And I hope for everyone joining here to kind of see what is sacred space for each of us. And I see that in terms of comments about, it seems like the mix is good and a nice balance.
Oh, good.
Beautiful to see your work too. So thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. 1 second. I love the MIT chapel. I just want to look for a second. I didn't look at any of them. You guys are bringing in great stuff. There's also a beautiful Chagall, beautiful Matisse. There's so many great people that made chapels. You can Google them and you'll see many other people who have made them that are just great. I just picked three, including mine, that were good. So anyway, have a great Shabbat Shalom. Thanks a million. Enjoy Tel Aviv, one of my favorite cities in the world, and enjoy California because I just love California. And
Shabbat
wherever you
Shalom.
are, is great. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.